Do you ever see your sisters from the group Destiny's Child? Do you
Yes.
ever? Okay, you do. Have you had an opportunity to just celebrate that y'all are women and y'all have kids and y'all are, what is that like?
It was the last time. I've seen the girls on different times. I've seen Beyonce actually more than the other girls.
That's
really
crazy. Come on, B. I love it.
And the last time we were together was at the Renaissance. And that was the first time in 26 years.
It all started as a night meant for healing, but turned into the kind of reunion that exposes old wounds nobody really healed from. After 2 decades of silence, side eyes, and unfinished business, Destiny's Child found themselves in the same room again. Beyoncé, Kelly, Michelle, LaTavia, and the one name that fans never thought they'd see back in that circle, LaTavia Roberson. When Beyoncé's Renaissance tour stopped in Houston, it wasn't just another concert. For LaTavia, it was a return to the city that made her and the group that broke her. For the first time in 23 years, she walked backstage, nerves shaking, heart pounding, not knowing if she'd be welcomed or politely ignored. But what she walked into wasn't shade. It was love, warmth, tears, the kind of emotion that hits when history and forgiveness collide. Beyoncé saw her, froze for a second, and then ran to hug her like time had folded in half.
And I got to see that picture that was the first time in 26 years that we had been in the same.
Have you ever felt like the world has had a chance to see LaTavia? No.
No. And I was looking for R&B divas to be that platform.
Ooh.
For people to see me. Not me as this person that, she got to put out an album and all that. If she don't do that, then fuck her, basically. And I'm really a person that I don't really care about people saying that, but what I signed up for is what I did not get. At all. Even to the point to where when it came time for the finale, production, you've already mentioned that name, came into my dressing room and said,
Kelly was already tearing up before a single word was spoken. Michelle prayed over them. LaTavia smiled through tears. And for the first time since the early 2000s, all 5 of those voices were in harmony again. Not on stage, but in spirit. LaTavia said it herself later. The hugs were real, the energy pure, and for a brief moment, it felt like family again.
So when you saw her for the first time in way over 10 years, in that, like, what was that feeling like, or conversation like?
It was love. I met the twins. I was back there with Solange, Blue, like my mom, like Jay, like it was great. It was great. The conversation wasn't about that because it was irrelevant. It was in that moment. It was what it needed to be. Over an hour, like, yeah, it was great.
She said Beyoncé even laid her head in her lap, like the 2 girls who once dreamed about Grammys and stadium lights before fame twisted everything. Even Jay-Z got emotional, pulling LaTavia in for a hug and whispering, "B still loves you," and LaTavia didn't hesitate. I love her too, but as sweet as that moment was, it didn't stay sweet for long, because right behind the sisterhood stood the same shadow that haunted their early years. Mathew Knowles, the man who built Destiny's Child and broke it in the same breath. At Beyoncé's request, Mathew agreed to meet LaTavia and LaTavia for dinner, a chance to talk things out, make peace, maybe even close the last open wound in this story. For LaTavia, it felt like a long overdue chapter finally coming full circle. After all, Mathew wasn't just a manager to those girls. He was a father figure, a protector, the one adult voice guiding them through the chaos of the music world when they were barely old enough to drive. She thought maybe this dinner would be healing. Maybe they'd laugh about the old days, clear the air, and walk away lighter. But what she got instead was pure Mathew Knowles, sharp, dismissive, and cold enough to turn that dinner table into a battlefield. At first, things were civil. Polite smiles, shared memories, the kind of small talk that comes before a storm. But the second LaTavia tried to bring up the past, the long days, the underpayment, the way he treated her mother, Cheryl, who chaperoned those early tours, the energy shifted. Mathew got defensive fast. He brushed off the questions, changed the subject, made slick comments that didn't sit right, and then he crossed the line. He made a jab about LaTavia's mother, a breast cancer survivor, a woman who protected those girls like they were her own, And that's when the switch flipped. LaTavia leaned forward and snapped, "Don't talk about my mother. She held your fort down while you were out there doing what you did to Miss Tina." The table froze. LaToya's eyes went wide. And Mathew, he didn't deny a thing. He just sat back, stone-faced, like he'd been waiting to be confronted but still couldn't handle it. And if that wasn't bad enough, when LaToya tried to remind him how they saw him, how much they trusted him, it only made things worse. She said softly, "We looked at you like a father." And Mathew looked her dead in the eye and said, "I never tried to be your father." Silence. Cold. Thick. Heavy. That sentence shattered something in LaTavia, because whatever else he might claim, that man acted like a father back then. He controlled their travel, their meals, their stage time, their rehearsals, their entire lives. He was the adult in charge, the one calling every shot while those girls gave up their teenage years chasing a dream that filled his pockets too. To now sit there decades later and erase that bond, to act like their trust was a misunderstanding, that was more than cruel. It was cowardly. LaTavia's voice started shaking, but not from fear, from fury. She stood up and said, "Why am I here? You're a pompous son of a bitch, and I'm not one of your little girls you can control anymore." Mathew blinked, trying to hold on to the same control he used to have, but it was gone. LaTavia was grown now, and she wasn't bowing to him again. She turned, ready to leave, but before she could walk away, Mathew actually had the nerve to say, "Are you at least going to open my gift?" She didn't even look back. She just said, "You can keep your gift. Karma's already on the way," and that was it. The dinner that was supposed to bring closure ended with decades of tension blowing wide open. LaTavia later explained that what hurt her most wasn't even the disrespect. It was the denial. After everything, Mathew still couldn't own what he'd done. The underpayment, the pressure, the manipulation, the way he pitted the girls against each other to keep control. She said back when they were touring with TLC, 5 or 6 shows a week, she and LaToya were making $1,000 a week, total. Meanwhile, Mathew was stacking checks like he was the 4th member of the group. And when they finally tried to speak up, when they dared to question why the numbers didn't add up, they weren't met with understanding or negotiation. They were replaced. That's the real reason LaTavia says she left. Not because of creative differences, not because of drama with Beyoncé or Kelly, but because she and LaToya had the courage to ask for fairness. And just like that, their dreams, their sisterhood, and their place in one of the biggest girl groups of all time vanished. Even after all that, LaTavia never stopped loving the girls. Her fight was never with them. Her pain was with management, with Mathew, and watching him sit across from her at that dinner, still arrogant after all these years, confirmed what she'd always known. He didn't see them as family. He saw them as investments. The only difference now is that LaTavia finally had the strength to call it out, right to his face. Because when a man who built his empire off the voices of teenage girls can't even apologize to the women they became, that's not leadership. That's legacy rot. And this time the whole world's watching it unfold. The days after that dinner were supposed to be calm, healing even. But instead, they cracked open a storm the entire industry felt. Because while LaTavia tried to quietly fly back home and process what had just gone down, people close to that dinner couldn't stay quiet. Someone leaked the story, every uncomfortable detail. And before sunrise, blogs were eating it alive. The headlines weren't just about Destiny's Child anymore. They were about Mathew Knowles, the man who managed Beyoncé into global superstardom, but apparently left a trail of emotional wreckage in his wake. At first, Beyoncé stayed silent. She didn't want this reunion to turn into another messy public spectacle. But when the internet started dragging her family, her name, and even her mother into it, she couldn't pretend not to see it anymore. And here's where things got complicated, because the world wanted to believe that the Destiny's Child sisterhood was unbreakable. But this situation exposed the truth. The bond between the women and the man who controlled their careers had never been healed. It had just been buried. Behind the scenes, Beyoncé had pushed for that dinner. She wanted her dad to finally face LaTavia and LaToya, not to start drama, but to help everyone close that wound before it poisoned what little peace they had left. She thought maybe time had softened him. Maybe he'd be willing to say what he never said back then. "I'm sorry." But Mathew didn't come to apologize. He came to rewrite history. People who were there said the whole dinner felt like a power play. Like Mathew was still trying to prove he was the one who made Destiny's Child what it was. He allegedly talked about business, legacy, sales, tours, everything except emotions. And when the girls tried to talk about their pain, he twisted it into gratefulness, saying they should focus on what they gained, not what they lost. Imagine hearing that from the man who fired you as a teenager after 10 years of friendship. It was a slap in the face. And for LaTavia, it proved that the same man who once called them his girls had only ever seen them as employees. After the dinner, fans noticed something subtle. Beyoncé posted a quiet black and white photo of her and her mother with the caption, "Some wounds are generations deep." She didn't tag anyone. She didn't have to. People instantly connected the dots. Miss Tina, meanwhile, stayed graceful but firm. When someone commented under one of her posts saying Matthew's still causing chaos, she replied simply, "Growth doesn't mean silence." That one sentence said more than any interview could. And then LaTavia finally broke her own silence. She sat down for an interview. Not messy, not dramatic, just raw honesty. She didn't attack Beyoncé, didn't shade Kelly, didn't try to rehash gossip. Instead, she told her truth. Calm, measured, but cutting. "When we were little girls, we trusted the adults in the room," she said. "And sometimes the adults were the ones who hurt us most." She spoke about how she and LaToya worked themselves into exhaustion, how they rehearsed until their voices cracked, and how the money they earned never reflected the hours they put in. "We were making $1,000 a week performing for arenas that sold out in hours," she said. "We weren't even allowed to question it. And when she finally did, when she found her voice, she was punished for using it." That was the part that hit fans the hardest. Because for years, people had been told the official story, that LaTavia and LaToya were replaced because they wanted new management or didn't fit the group's direction. But hearing it now, directly from her, stripped of PR polish, it finally made sense. She wasn't difficult. She was disposable. The interview spread like wildfire. Every entertainment outlet picked it up. Every fan page reposted clips, and suddenly the conversation shifted from nostalgia to accountability. People started asking real questions about how young women in the industry are managed, controlled, and silenced in the name of business. Kelly Rowland, ever the peacemaker, was the only one who spoke publicly in defense of everyone. "We were all kids," she said. "We all did our best with what we knew at the time. And I love every one of those girls, then and now." But even her diplomatic answer couldn't stop the fans from choosing sides. Some were Team LaTavia, praising her for her bravery. Others were Team Beyoncé, saying she shouldn't be blamed for her father's actions. And then there were those who were just shocked that the cracks in this fairy tale group ran so deep. And what made everything sting even more was how personal it all was. LaTavia wasn't just talking about contracts and performances. She talked about growing up on the road with people she thought would be her forever family. She said there were nights when they would all sleep in the same hotel room, talk about their dreams, promise to never let fame break them. And then one day, her phone stopped ringing. No explanation, no call, just gone. And when she turned on the TV and saw two new girls in her spot, singing the songs she helped build, her heart broke. "I didn't lose a job," she said. "I lost my sisters." For years, LaTavia carried that silence. She admitted that the trauma from it led her into dark places. Drinking, depression, isolation. "When you're told your whole worth was tied to that group," she said, "you don't know who you are when it's gone." It took her becoming a mother to rebuild that sense of self, to finally realize that her story didn't end when she was kicked out of Destiny's Child. It just took a new form. And now, after all this time, she's not telling her story out of bitterness. She's telling it because she's free. Fans flooded her comments with love, calling her brave, calling her real, thanking her for showing that healing doesn't always look glamorous. It looks like standing up for your younger self, even when the world tells you to stay quiet. Meanwhile, Mathew stayed doing interviews of his own, business-focused, detached, and still dodging every emotional question like he was allergic to accountability. When one host asked if he'd ever apologized to LaTavia or LaToya, he smirked and said, "I wish them well, but I don't live in the past." That single line lit the internet on fire again, because it wasn't just disrespectful, it was tone deaf. The same man who has made a career out of retelling his own version of history suddenly wanted everyone else to forget theirs. And now, fans are looking at him differently. They're asking whether the family man image he sells is just another business tactic. Because when you've got your own daughters out here thriving and glowing, but your former artist still bleeding from the wounds you left, what does that say about you? Even LaToya has stayed mostly quiet. But insiders say that after that dinner, she reached out to LaTavia just to check in. They've rebuilt their friendship quietly. No press, no interviews, just love. Because at the end of the day, the two of them share something no one else can ever understand. What it feels like to be erased from your own story. And the most poetic part? After everything Mathew tried to control, their careers, their money, their voices, it's their words now, rewriting the narrative. LaTavia didn't need a manager to validate her truth. She just needed a mic. By the time the dust settled from LaTavia's interview, the story had outgrown gossip blogs. It had become a full-blown cultural moment. What started as a quiet reunion meant to symbolize healing had turned into a reckoning. Because once LaTavia spoke, everyone started looking at Destiny's Child's past with new eyes, And the more fans revisited those early clips, the clearer the pattern became. Mathew Knowles had built an empire out of control. For years, people brushed it off. He was tough, strategic, all business. But what LaTavia revealed stripped away the PR gloss. He wasn't just a manager. He was the gatekeeper of their youth, their dreams, their image. And now, with Beyoncé standing as one of the most powerful women in music, that old system looked even more disturbing. The irony? The women Mathew once dismissed are now the ones defining legacy. Not with charts, but with truth. The moment LaTavia's interview dropped, radio stations, podcasts, and talk shows all jumped on the topic. Hosts debated whether Mathew ever truly respected the original lineup, or if he'd always planned to build everything around his daughter. And while some die-hard fans tried to defend him, even they couldn't explain away the arrogance he showed at that dinner, especially after LaToya Luckett quietly confirmed what LaTavia said. She didn't do a full tell-all. She didn't shade anyone. But during an Instagram Live, when someone asked if what LaTavia described was true, LaToya paused, smiled sadly, and said, "Let's just say she didn't lie." That single line sent the internet spinning. Suddenly, it wasn't just one woman's story. It was a pattern. Two people, two experiences, same scars. And then came the fans digging into old footage. Old making the band-style clips from the early 2000s. In one, Mathew can be seen speaking over the girls, dismissing their opinions, even cutting Beyoncé off mid-sentence. Back then, people thought it was tough love. Now, it just looked manipulative. For LaTavia, the public validation was bittersweet. She didn't want to tear down Destiny's Child. She wanted to remind people of the little girls behind the fame, the ones who loved to sing before contracts and control changed everything. She even posted a photo of the original group on Instagram. No captions, no hashtags, just hearts. Fans flooded it with comments like, "You deserved better," and "This is the real Destiny's Child." Meanwhile, Mathew was scrambling. He tried to downplay everything, claiming he wished her the best and that people love to rewrite history. But that smugness, that refusal to take any accountability, only made things worse. Because this time, his words weren't controlling the story. His silence was. Miss Tina, who had been quiet through most of the mess, finally posted something that felt like a warning shot cloaked in elegance. "Closure doesn't mean conversation," she wrote. "Sometimes peace comes when you stop expecting an apology." Fans instantly read between the lines. They knew that was about Mathew, and just like that, the narrative flipped. The same man who once prided himself on being a business genius was now trending for all the wrong reasons. Clips of him dodging emotional questions resurfaced, interviews where he downplayed the girls' contributions, even sound bites where he referred to Destiny's Child as his project. People were finally saying out loud what insiders whispered for years, that his ego might have been the real reason the group fractured. And while the internet roasted him, LaTavia was glowing, not because she was happy to see anyone dragged, but because she finally had peace. She started booking panels, speaking at women's conferences, and giving interviews about healing, resilience, and taking back your narrative. She talked openly about recovery, motherhood, and forgiving people who would never admit they were wrong. And every time she spoke, her confidence radiated. She wasn't the girl who got kicked out anymore. She was the woman who got free. Even Beyoncé, though she never addressed the drama directly, seemed to send quiet signals of solidarity. During one of her last tour shows, she performed Survivor with a new intro line that fans swore was intentional. "We all went through the fire, and some of us made it through stronger." The crowd screamed. The internet caught it. And though she didn't name names, people knew it was a moment of acknowledgement. Kelly stayed graceful, as always, standing firmly in the middle. She posted an old Destiny's Child photo with the caption, "Grateful for the journey, no matter how hard the lessons were." Even Michelle, usually quiet on controversy, liked that post. A subtle nod that the truth might finally be settling in for everyone. Mathew, on the other hand, seemed to dig his heels in. He went on a podcast not long after the reunion fallout and said, "Everybody wants to be a victim nowadays. Destiny's Child was a business. I made business decisions. I don't owe apologies for success." That line destroyed whatever sympathy he had left. Because success built on silence and pain isn't legacy, it's exploitation. And fans weren't letting that slide anymore. Under that clip, the top comment said it best. Mathew didn't raise Destiny's Child. Those girls raised themselves while he took the credit. By the end of the month, the narrative had completely shifted. LaTavia wasn't being dragged anymore. She was being celebrated. The woman who once disappeared from the spotlight was now commanding it on her own terms. She said in her final interview, "It took me years to find my voice again, but I'd lose everything all over just to tell my truth. Because when you've been silenced, freedom sounds better than fame. And that's what made this whole story come full circle. Destiny's Child didn't just produce stars, it produced survivors, women who learned the hard way that not every dream comes with peace. And now, as LaTavia stands on her own, no label, no manager, no script, she's showing the world that healing doesn't mean pretending the pain never happened. It means refusing to let it define you. So while Mathew's name trends for all the wrong reasons, LaTavia's story is trending for the right ones. A woman reclaiming her narrative, rewriting history with the same voice he once tried to silence. And maybe that's the real reunion moment. Not the hugs backstage or the photos that broke the internet, but the moment the truth finally got its microphone. Because in the end, no matter how many hits Destiny's Child had, no song hits harder than freedom. If you felt this breakdown, go ahead and hit that like button. Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe, because we're just getting started on uncovering what really goes down behind the spotlight. And trust me, this story, it's far from over.